drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% since rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with its locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Tensions are escalating in the Middle East as the United States carried out further strikes against Iran, after Iran responded to earlier strikes with attacks on 5 Gulf nations. Iran claimed it had once again closed the Strait of Hormuz, but U.S. President Donald Trump rejected the claim, insisting that traffic is flowing. An intense heat wave has swept much of South Korea, with daytime highs forecast to reach between 30 and 37 degrees Celsius in most parts of the country today. Although temporary relief is expected to arrive tomorrow as the seasonal rain front moves in, forecasters warn that temperatures will likely climb again once the rain passes. Leveraged and inverse ETFs linked to SK hynix shares are set to debut on the New York stock market this week. This comes after the Korean chipmaker's Nasdaq debut last week, when its American depository receipts surged around 13% from the initial offering price, making it the largest ever U.S. listing by a foreign company. The United States and Iran have exchanged heavy attacks, sharply escalating tensions across the Gulf region. Despite the strikes, U.S. President Donald Trump has rejected Iran's claims that it had closed the Strait of Hormuz. Our Cho Young-eun starts us off.
The U.S. continued strikes against Iran over the weekend, which U.S. Central Command said in a social media post on Sunday were meant to degrade Iran's ability to attack civilian mariners and commercial ships freely transiting the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM said President Trump ordered the strikes to hold Iranian forces accountable. According to the latest reports, around 140 Iranian targets were hit, including missile and drone launch sites, in an effort to weaken Iran's ability to threaten civilian shipping in the strategic waterway. Iran's armed forces have launched waves of missiles and drones targeting U.S. military bases across the Persian Gulf, including bases in Jordan, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman, in response to U.S. bombings against military facilities late last week. Iran's state-run Islamic Republic news agency reported that enemy projectiles had struck Hashim Island, a strategically important island in the Gulf that is home to a major Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps base. Later reports indicated that additional military facilities in Bandar Abbas, Qashm, and Hajabad had also been attacked. The sharp escalation in hostilities came as Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced that it has shut the Strait of Hormuz. However, President Trump immediately rejected the claim and said traffic is flowing. U.S. Central Command has also insisted that the strait remains open, adding that U.S. forces are positioned and prepared to ensure freedom of navigation in the vital waterway. Cho Young-eun, Arirang News.
And now for more on the situation in the Middle East, we're joined today by Dr. Kim Dae-chun, Professor of International Relations at the Graduate School of International Studies at Seogang University. Professor Kim, thanks for coming on today.
Good to be here.
So the United States has launched more strikes on Iran overnight. And after U.S. President Donald Trump said last week that the deal with Iran is now over, how do you think the U.S. intends to pursue this conflict from here?
Well, despite the latest round of U.S. strikes, I still don't think President Trump wants to return to a full-scale war with Iran. As we speak, there have been additional American strikes, but I see these attacks as an effort to maintain leverage in negotiations rather than to launch a new phase of the war. Sure, Trump once said that the deal was over, but I don't think that's what is actually happening. Behind the scenes, diplomacy is still moving forward, not directly, but indirectly through countries such as Pakistan, Qatar, and others. The biggest issue right now is the Strait of Hormuz, of course. The American position is that the entire strait should be open at once and remain open, free of any restrictions and free of any charges, any fees. Iran takes a very different view. Iran argues that the only shipping routes it designates are open, and after a temporary period of 60 days, ships will have to pay service fees. Honestly, none of this is surprising. The MOU was never a final agreement. It was simply a framework for the next 60 days of negotiations. The fundamental problem is that both sides are interpreting the same document in very different ways. That's why I say that it's a less of memorandum of understanding, and it's more a memorandum of misunderstanding. But even so, neither side seems to willing to go back to the situation before the MOU. MOU was signed. Sure, they are fighting, but they are also negotiating at the same time.
Right, and in response to that, Iran has also attacked Gulf nations and has said it's once again closed the Strait of Hormuz. What do you think Iran's strategic objective is at this stage?
At this stage, I think the Strait of Hormuz is the most important source of leverage over the United States. In fact, it may be the only significant leverage Iran still has. One senior figure to Khamenei, Mustafa Khamenei, said that Hormuz is more valuable than 20 nuclear bombs. I think this statement speaks volume about how Iranian leaders view this issue. Iran understands that it cannot really compete with the United States in a conventional military sense. What it can do instead is to create costs. It can threaten global energy flows. It can disrupt shipping. It can put pressure on Gulf states that host American military facilities and bases. So what Iran is trying to do now is demonstrate credibility, credibility to impose costs. Tehran wants the United States to believe that when it threatens to disrupt Hormuz, it actually means it. And that, I think, is the reason why it shut down the Hormuz once again. And here the message is very simple. We may be weaker, but we still possess enough military and asymmetric capabilities to impose serious costs on you and other Gulf states. In other words, Iran is trying to preserve deterrence. It wants President Trump to understand that if Washington continues to pressure Iran, Tehran still has ways to retaliate. So this is not simply about a waterway. It is ultimately about bargaining power.
Right, so both sides are accusing each other of violating the deal, but neither side has officially called off these peace talks. How do you see negotiations between U.S. and Iran unfolding from here?
The way I see the situation is both countries are testing each other's nerves right now. They are trying to push the envelope and gain more leverage. But at the same time, as I said, neither side wants the conflict to escalate into a full-blown war. That, I think, is the most important point here. We all know there is a tremendous, really tremendous amount of anger and mistrust between Washington and Tehran, and that hasn't changed, and that is not going to change, in my personal opinion. But what has changed is that both sides now seem to understand the costs of retaliation and escalation. So what I expect is a pattern of negotiations, pressure, threats, occasional military strikes, and then a return to negotiations. They will continue arguing over how to interpret the MOU. They will accuse each other of violating the agreement. But from time to time, they may use maybe a limited force to improve their bargaining position. Then they'll come back to the negotiation table again. And I think this has already become a new normal. The new normal, the danger, however, is that history shows us many examples where limited and controlled confrontations eventually spiraled out of control. So while this situation may be manageable for now, it is inherently very, very dangerous. And I don't really see a clear exit unless one side eventually makes major concessions.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how the situation plays out. All right, Professor Kim, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
South Korea is enduring its most intense heat wave of the summer, with temperatures climbing as high as 37 degrees Celsius and tropical nights affecting much of the country. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
South Korea is sweltering under an intense heat wave, with scorching temperatures and tropical nights affecting much of the country on Monday. Daytime highs are forecast to reach between 30 and 37 degrees Celsius, while most regions are expected to see a heat index of around 33 degrees through Tuesday. Parts of Central Korea, Gyeongsang-buk-do Province, and Jeollabuk-do Province could feel as hot as 35 degrees. Seoul recorded its first tropical night of the year and its hottest temperature so far at 35 degrees Celsius, prompting authorities to expand the tropical night advisories. The Korean Meteorological Administration says the extreme heat is being driven by two powerful high-pressure systems over the Korean peninsula, combined with warm, humid southerly winds.
Heatwave advisories remain in effect across most of the country as a strong upper-level high-pressure system and hot, humid southerly winds fuel the extreme heat, with severe warnings issued for Pohang and Gyeongsan in Gyeongsang-buk-do Province.
Temporary relief is expected to arrive from Tuesday as the seasonal rain front moves in, bringing monsoon showers nationwide and temporarily easing the extreme heat. However, forecasters warn temperatures are likely to climb again once the rain passes, meaning the summer heat is far from over. Many people have sought relief from the heat at Seoul's Han River swimming pools, where crowds packed the facilities to cool off and escape the lingering summer temperatures.
It feels like the heat disappears all at once. It's cool and nice. Playing at night feels romantic.
With much of the summer still ahead, many will continue to seek out any relief from the heat, both during the day and night. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Following the U.S. listing of SK hynix American Depository Receipts last week, leveraged and inverse exchange traded funds, or ETFs, tied to the underlying asset are set to debut on the New York stock market early this week. According to major U.S. ETF issuers, multiple ETFs linked to the SK hynix ADR are scheduled for launch on Monday and Tuesday. U.S. ETF issuers have already been managing single-stock leveraged and inverse ETFs, tracking major tech heavyweights listed in New York such as NVIDIA, Tesla, and Alphabet. The SK hynix ADR made its debut on Wall Street on Friday, surging approximately 13% from its initial offering price to close at around $168.5. South Korea, being the only country besides the U.S. to deploy both an Aegis destroyer and a submarine to RIMPAC, drew a lot of attention from participating navies for their newest technologies and impressive warships. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
When the South Korean Navy first participated in the Rim of the Pacific in 1990, it came with only 2 warships. This year, marking the 19th edition of its participation, a lot has changed. The Navy has not only assumed the role of Maritime Component Commander, becoming the first Navy from an Asian country to lead the force, it came with its most advanced naval assets along with more than 700 Navy and Marine Corps personnel. Among the assets, the largest Aegis destroyer, the 8,200-ton Cheongjo the Great, drew particular attention, as only 4, South Korea, the U.S., Japan, and Australia, were the participating nations that deployed Aegis destroyers. So far, during the exercise period, around 3,000 visitors have come for a tour, who reportedly admire the ship's outstanding capabilities and advanced technology.
Many foreign visitors said the ship was impressive and looked brand new. This exercise showed me how much the Republic of Korea Navy's global reputation has grown, and it made me proud of our Navy.
The frigate Daejeon welcomed the foreign naval crew for a tour.
Many foreign naval personnel who toured the ship praised its well-designed living quarters and said its equipment is laid out with the operator in mind.
The Dosan Anchangho was another Korean naval asset for foreign personnel to tour, especially after it sailed approximately 14,000 kilometers across the Pacific Ocean. In fact, only 4 nations, South Korea, the U.S., Canada, and Peru, deployed submarines this year for RIMPAC. And according to the commander of the submarine, Peruvian naval personnel were impressed by the scale of the 3,000-ton submarine and its advanced capabilities. Once seen as a small navy that only sent a couple of frigates to RIMPAC in the past, the ROK Navy has now emerged as a major maritime force, showcasing its advanced capabilities and rising global presence. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News, Honolulu.
Meanwhile, in Venezuela, the death toll from the country's devastating twin earthquakes has now climbed to 4,490, according to updated figures released by the country's government. The official number of injured remains at 16,740, while 17,907 people have been left homeless. Officials reported that 856 buildings were damaged and 1,222 aftershocks have been recorded since the main quake struck on June 24th. The United Nations has estimated that around 50,000 people remain missing beneath the rubble as search and rescue operations continue. In sports, South Korea's Ryu Hae-ran has captured her second straight LPGA major title, winning the Amundi Evian Championship in France after a dramatic playoff victory on Sunday. The world number 7 defeated Canada's Brooke Henderson on the first playoff hole after the pair finished tied at a 19 under par 265. Yu had led by 5 shots during the final round before being forced into extra holes, where she sealed the win with a birdie. It marks her 5th LPGA Tour title overall and comes just 2 weeks after her breakthrough major victory at the KPMG Women's PGA Championship. She is now the first South Korean golfer since Park In-bi in 2013 to win back-to-back LPGA major championships. Young farmers in Korea are using AI-generated data to grow tomatoes in a smarter and a more sustainable way. The system is helping cut costs and challenges old assumptions about what can be grown in South Korea's warmer regions. Our Kim So-young explains more.
Kimjae, Jeollabuk-do province is known for its golden sunsets. It is also home to a tomato farm run by Kim Gi-hyun, a young farmer who moved to the countryside 5 years ago. But this is not a conventional greenhouse farm. Kim's farm is managed with the help of an AI program that uses sunlight and weather data to guide the growing process. The program is called GrowMind and was developed by Kim and a group of fellow young farmers. The system predicts farm conditions hour by hour, including the sun's angle and position, seasonal solar radiation, humidity, and cloud cover. The data is then used to adjust the greenhouse environment. The results have been significant. Heating costs have dropped by around 30%, while yields have increased by roughly 14 to 20%.
We believe that tomatoes could not be grown during the hottest months in the southern area, but with the help of AI, I was able to make it work.
Kim believes farming should be driven by data. Last year, his program was awarded at an AI competition hosted by the Rural Development Administration.
By quickly processing large amounts of data collected, AI can help optimize greenhouse management.
The Rural Development Administration says it plans to expand the technology to more crops in the years ahead. Kim Seo-young, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Republican U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham died Saturday night after suffering a ruptured aorta. He was 71. According to preliminary findings from the medical examiner's office, the rupture was linked to hardened arteries, with officials awaiting toxicology results to confirm an official cause of death. Just hours before his death, Senator Graham had returned from a trip to Ukraine, where he met with President Vladimir Zelensky to discuss air defense needs. Ukrainian and Israeli leaders both expressed condolences, praising Graham's decades-long advocacy for their nations. President Trump called Graham a, quote, hard-working patriot and ordered flags lowered in his honor. Graham had once been a vocal critic of Trump before later becoming a loyal supporter. He spent much of his career shaping foreign policy from the Senate Judiciary Committee, where he oversaw more than 200 federal judicial confirmations. Typhoon Bavi made landfall in eastern China this weekend as the strongest storm to hit mainland China this year. The storm struck the coast of Zhejiang province on Saturday night before weakening to a tropical storm as it moved inland. Chinese authorities had evacuated more than 2.8 million people, and thousands of flights and train services were canceled. Despite widespread property damage, no deaths or injuries have been reported. Before hitting mainland China, the storm battered Taiwan, which reported 134 injuries and hundreds of canceled flights. Meteorologists warn the storm system retains enough strength to generate dangerous rainfall hundreds of kilometers inland as it moves toward China's northeastern provinces this week. A fire tore through a Bangkok pub early on Monday, killing at least 27 people in one of Thailand's deadliest nightlife disasters in recent years. Thailand's Prime Minister confirmed the death toll after visiting the scene. Survivors reported that there were no emergency exits near the rear bathroom area where many fled. Another 63 people remain hospitalized with injuries. Witnesses described a sudden blackout followed by thick smoke and a powerful explosion that ignited the venue's stage area. Authorities are investigating the cause as forensic teams work to identify the victims. In Spain, one of the country's deadliest wildfires has killed at least 12 people in the southeastern region of Almeria. The fire has scorched more than 60 square kilometers of forest and farmland since starting on Thursday, amid Western Europe's third heat wave this summer. Most victims were foreign nationals who authorities say died after failing to reach safety in time, though family members of one victim dispute claims that adequate warnings were given. Spanish officials arrested 2 people for violating evacuation orders as crews evacuated nearly 1,500 residents from surrounding communities.
As the monsoon briefly takes a break, extreme heat has been taking over across Korea. Seoul experienced its second consecutive tropical night as overnight temperatures stayed over 25 degrees Celsius. And today feels like temperatures will climb to around 35 degrees in the capital region. In fact, most regions are under heat wave alerts and tropical night advisories. So please take well care. Meanwhile, a few showers are possible this afternoon and evening in central Korea and Jeollabuk-do province, bringing 5 to 40 millimeters of passing showers. Then 5 to 20 millimeters of rain is expected for southwestern regions as well as Jeju Island. And this afternoon, Seoul will be soaring to 33 degrees Celsius, Daegu topping out at 30 36 degrees, then Gyeongju will be sizzling hot at 37 degrees under strong UV rays. The monsoon rain will return nationwide tomorrow, and as the rain moves in, the intense heat will ease and things will become a lot more comfortable.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
A country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, July 13th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Ki-hoon.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, and also Fabi's with us.
Happy start of the week.
Happy start of the week, and both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're at the start of a brand new work week, and many of us are looking for a fresh start or maybe even a little luck in our personal lives. Today, we're taking a look at a dating trend that's putting a whole new spin on one particular lucky number. So forget about being a perfect 10. According to this trend, being a 7 might actually be quite a flattering compliment. So in Korea, what does it mean if someone is described as a 7 Q, and how should we react to this?
Oh, it's a difficult question, but I think it could mean you're slightly above the average. Okay. Perhaps not Prince Charming, but close to your ideal type. Now, we say 이상형 in Korean, and we actually ask this question quite commonly in the dating scene, like, what is your ideal type? 이상형이 뭐예요? So when we start talking about ideal type, the list can go on and on and on and on. And perhaps just to simplify, we can just give it a score out of 10. But I think, honestly, giving a person a number rating seems a little unrealistic, superficial, and just narrowing like human qualities by not giving enough space and room to actually get to know someone. If you just say, oh, she's a 7, he's an 8. I mean, what is 7? What is 8?
Everyone's standards are different. Everyone's values are different.
It's subjective. So, but I think this is a very interesting topic because it is kind of trending online as well. So something that we can all relate to.
Right. So what are your thoughts on this, Fabian?
Well, it's interesting. Why 7? I feel like 7 just feels like a very safe number. And it reminds me of those street interviews where they would ask people, how would you rate yourself out of 10? And it was quite funny because a lot of people who were quite confident in their looks, but still wanted to play the, let's say, humble card, would say 7.
7 is like a safe, like a cop-out.
Exactly, because you're not saying that you're close to perfection. And to be honest, perfection is not as relatable, so it's less attractive. So to some extent, I feel like 7 is a little bit hotter than 10.
Right, that's a good way to put it.
In some situations.
So from today, I'm going to be a 7.
Exactly.
I'm a 7.
That's the new goal. So it seems a 7 strikes a balance between confidence and humility, which may explain why the label has resonated with so many people. It's almost as if being perfect has become less appealing than being someone people can actually relate to. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. The definition of an ideal man or woman is constantly evolving. The answer has never been fixed. As society evolves, so do our expectations, beauty standards, and even the qualities we value in a relationship. And those standards can look very different depending on the culture. Today on News Generation, we explore what it means to be a perfect 7 in Korea, what it says about the minimum standard people expect from a partner. Just as we saw in a video, the idea of being a 7 isn't really about getting a score. It's about meeting what many people see as the baseline for a good partner. The trend has struck a chord with many young Koreans, especially those who constantly compare themselves to others online. So going back to our discussion in the beginning, what does it actually mean to be a 7 here in Korea these days?
So, before I answer your question, it's worthy to note one rising concept that's gaining a lot of attention among young Koreans like Gen Zs and millennials. It's the word average and what it means to live an average life. Because so much time, like you said, is spent on social media, we are constantly exposed to other people's lives and inevitably compare their own circumstances with those of others. And what we see as average can be very different. You know, the standards may change due to social media. And this often creates a desire to at least be average or to be somewhere in the middle because much of the content seems beyond reach, too luxurious, something that is far from reality from the consumer's perspective. Now, drawing on this mindset, a YouTuber created charts describing 7 out of 10 10 man and a 7 out of 10 woman.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the term refers to someone who would be rated a 7 out of 10. Now, although 7 is technically above the average score of 5, in the context of dating and marriage, it has come to mean an ordinary person who possesses what are considered the bare minimum acceptable qualities for a potential partner. So if you look at the list, it's a little ridiculous.
So that's the bare minimum.
Sometimes a bare minimum.
Wow.
And what the YouTuber did was he actually went out into the main street of Myeongdong. He held out the huge chart, as you see on the screen. And he asked people, if you meet all the requirements, I will actually give out free cash. Now, ironically, not a single person actually met those requirements, showing how ridiculous, superficial, unrealistic, even a 7 out of 10 person is considered in today's society.
Like, looking at that graph, I feel like a combination of all those qualities, it's crazy to think that should be an average.
That's what I mean.
I feel like an ideal partner more of it. So, of course, that raises another question. How realistic really are these expectations? So, do you think many people would actually be considered 7 around you? And would you, I guess, consider yourself a 7?
Well, according to that chart that we just saw, I would not be considered an average man worthy of going on a date or even getting married. So I don't know whether I should be happy or not, because I'm not single. So I'm quite happy that I'm not single, but looking at that chart, I don't know whether I should be sad or happy. It's just kind of like, unrealistic. Now, going back to your question, I'm sure there are men and women out there who are actually the 7s, but on the list, there's nothing about personality. Personality, what they value the most, their relationship with their family members, their siblings, and so on. So now, if you're a 7, check all those boxes in that list, I would feel that you would actually want more from the other person, because, people can get quite greedy, they can't always be satisfied with what they have, and they expect more and more and more. So I do understand where this whole list is stemming from, but the sentiment of actually comparing yourself with others by giving a score seems, again, very superficial, unrealistic, and inhumane, to be honest.
It is. And it's like I said before earlier, it's very subjective because like you said, personality, I would say, I agree. I think that's quite important and quite non-negotiable, but that's obviously not on the list.
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, after seeing some of the requirements, I'm not even sure if I could be a 7 myself. It's much more strict than I expected. But overall, I always consider myself to be around that number. I mean, it's very superficial to put yourself a number, but it's because most of the people around me might also relate to the fact that there is this humane ego, this self-perception and this cognitive bias of like, I always think about myself as a person, my preferences, the things that I want. And so it's very easy to see yourself as a persona that is slightly above average in terms of importance to other people, even if that's not necessarily the reality. But it is that type of ego. However, when you actually put a number to it, I think things start to get a little bit messy. And I'm just curious about which requirements would take you from a 7 to an 8.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good point as well, yeah.
More money.
More money, I guess.
So I think most people probably check a few boxes, but not every single one. And that's what makes this trend so fascinating. It gets everyone comparing themselves. And those comparisons don't actually stop with appearance or personality. So how do people then, I guess, compare? I mean, Kyun just mentioned it, money, like finances, I guess.
Right. So Gen Zs and millennials are becoming increasingly interested in building wealth. And so they often compare their savings and their assets with other people online. So online, we have finance communities, and topics like the average assets of people in their 30s or the minimum amounts of savings that one would need before marrying are becoming more and more common. And I have to admit that even with my friends, that is a very hot topic of conversation. So every year, Korea actually releases statistics on average household assets and income. So the average household assets are about 570 million won, while the average monthly income is around 7.5 million won. So it's easy to see why so many young people are being concerned and anxious about these figures, as they tend to be quite high and a pretty unrealistic standard for young people who are just starting their careers or their own business, and that financial future starts to become a little bit ambiguous.
So it's easy to see how constantly comparing yourself reconcile your savings with the average can create unnecessary pressure, especially when social media tends to show only the highlights and the best parts of people's lives. But that raises a bigger question: is the average really even the right standard to measure ourselves against? So we also wanted to hear what our viewers thought about this. So we asked on the Arirang News YouTube channel, overall, do you consider yourself average? And here's what they had to say. So more than half of our viewers, 54%, said they consider themselves average overall. Meanwhile, 29% believe they're above average, while 17% feel they're below average. So looking at the results, it is interesting that more than half of our viewers see themselves as average, and perhaps that reflects how many people view themselves not at the top or the bottom, but somewhere in the middle. So is the average that we compare ourselves actually even realistic in the first place, Keenan?
I think it really depends who you target and make the average out of. Like, for example, the average wealth and salary figures can become misleading, just how Fabio just mentioned before, if the small number of high-income individuals are actually accounted for the overall average, which could significantly, raise the overall range. Furthermore, you tend to compare yourself with others more in the online world as you're exposed to, I guess, like I said before, endless, exaggerated, kind of filtered information, again, distorting what is considered the average. Now, according to statistics published by Deloitte last year, 36% of South Korean Gen Z respondents said, and 33% of millennials cited the cost of living as their greatest concern. In addition, 57% of Gen Z respondents said they were barely making ends meet with their current paychecks. So we can say that the glamorous lifestyles portrayed on social media are unlikely to represent the lives of the so-called ordinary average people. But at the same time, because we're so exposed to so much social media and everything that's going around online, these contents, we're kind of brainwashing ourselves and like confusing ourselves to find what is actually average or what's not average, what's above average, what's below average. So people are kind of thinking, why don't I just become the average? But then the standards that we saw today, it's just ridiculously high. It's extremely high. So people are like in turn becoming, I guess, what's that called? It's relative deprivation. Like, oh, if this is a standard, if this is what is considered average, I'm not even close to average. And that gives you a sense of discouragement again, in turn. So I don't know if this is a very healthy way of putting things, but I think at the end of the day, it's really up to your mindset, comparing less. I say do less social media. That's what I try to do. A lot of media detox. It kind of helps to really focus on yourself as well. But we're going to speak to a very good expert soon. So I guess we'll hear more from her.
Right, because when you see a certain type of lifestyle so often on social media, that becomes the average, but it's obviously not. So it seems like the average we see online isn't a necessary reality. It's often a carefully curated version of it. And as more people recognize this disconnect, a different kind of content actually has started resonating with younger audiences. So why is content about, I guess, ordinary, just normal lives become so popular these days, Fabio?
Well, thankfully, we have a positive shift when it comes to social media. So a lot of young creators and just regular people are starting to make content and talking about their own experiences and being very honest and vulnerable, which is a quite big difference from the reality of that distorted average that we are used to seeing with celebrities or high-profile influencers. So that type of toxic comparisons that start with the audience not really feeling connected are starting to become less common, and newer creators who are just being very real about their experiences and the way they see life and the way that they show that most people actually have ordinary lives are starting to get a lot more engagement. And I think that's part of the beauty of social media, the fact that anyone can be part of it. And I have to be honest, I used to watch a lot of celebrities on social media, but nowadays I enjoy rather seeing just normal people doing their crafts or talking about their own concerns.
So to help us better understand why we're so drawn to comparing ourselves with others and more, we're going to talk to a counselor, and that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
To help us better understand the psychology behind all this, we're now joined by Christy, a counselor at Torch Trinity Counseling Center. So hello, Christy. Thank you so much for connecting with us today. So Christy, why do young people feel pressure to meet certain standards?
Yes, I think there are at least two reasons. First, we have to consider the developmental stage of young people. Because they are still forming their identity, they're naturally more influenced by feedback and messages from the people around them. They're trying to understand who they are and what it means to be successful or accepted. In the absence of a stable internal standard, they often look to others as a reference point. And according to Leon Festinger's social comparison theory, people evaluate themselves by comparing with others, especially when objective standards are unclear. Second, the environment provides very clear standards of what success or attraction should look like. Society, families, schools, and the media constantly communicate what is considered to be average, like mentioned earlier. People nowadays strive for the perfect 7 because they want to be accepted by the society and those around them. If they're not able to live up to the expectation, we feel behind, creating a sense of anxiety.
Thank you for that response. Christy, is Korea more comparison-driven than other countries? If so, why is that the case?
In South Korea, there are strong social and cultural expectations surrounding academic achievement, prestigious careers, physical appearance especially, and financial success. These are often viewed as visible markers of attraction, accomplishment, success, making them easy points of comparison. As a result, many young people begin to evaluate their self-worth according to socially defined standards rather than their own intrinsic values. Also, we cannot overlook the influence young Korean people receive at home. Korean parents who have more concern for social reputation and status may give messages that their children should do better than others. And when children grow up hearing these messages, they start to internalize their parents' message, thinking that it's their own. And over time, they may start to believe that their value depends on how well they perform compared to others, and their self-worth becomes increasingly based on external standards.
Well, it's so interesting that comparison becomes a tool for self-assurance, right? It really makes you feel how you should perceive yourself in society. But if we really want to stay confident without constantly comparing ourselves, what can we do?
To stay confident, we need to shift from relying on external validation to developing a stronger sense of internal validation. So how can we do that? First, reflect on the standards you have to evaluate yourself. Are these standards truly your own, or have they been shaped by society? I resonated with how you guys question, are the standards even right or realistic? These are very good questions. Also, think about the messages you receive from your family, friends, teachers, or other significant people in your life. Did they encourage you to pursue external achievements, or did they help you to value internal qualities, such as having a kind or empathetic personality, or even growing resiliency and inner strength? It's also helpful to reconsider how you define success or being an attractive person. Instead of asking, am I doing better than other people? Ask yourself, am I growing compared to who I was yesterday? When do I genuinely feel good or feel proud of myself? So these questions shift the focus from competing with others to becoming the person you want to be. If we are able to have a stronger inner voice based on internal standards, then we will be less affected by social comparison.
And I guess in order to do that, I guess self-reflection sounds like it'll be really important. I think this is great advice, because I think it's so easy to look for external validation, especially in a society where, in an era where we just live on social media. Social media is all around us. There's also, especially I would say Korea is quite a competitive society. So that is really good advice. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
For coming on, Christy.
Thank you
very much.
So we just heard from a counselor about why we feel pressure to meet certain standards, why comparison may be especially common in Korea, and how we can build confidence without constantly measuring ourselves against others. Ultimately, though, it all comes down to how we choose to define success and happiness for ourselves, like our Zoom guest, Christy, just told us. So how much should we then care about meeting society's expectations, and what standards do you personally feel are actually worth striving for? Like, what is that internal validation that would be important to you?
I can really resonate with Christy, what she just said, internal validation rather than external validation.
Right.
So instead of like looking outside and comparing yourself with other people, all the standards that other people have set, the society has said, or even your parents. So, I mean, if you have that choice of who you can meet, who you can talk to, who you can spend time with, and if those people make you happy, more valued, I think make that choice right now. If you're surrounded by people who constantly compare you to others, compare themselves with others, and like have unrealistic standards, who keep like looking at all these famous people online and who kind of think, oh, I live a life like them, aspiring to those kind of people, then you can actually choose not to channel your thoughts with them. You can actually change your own environment. What I do personally is I really enjoy going for a run. Now, if you go online, you'll see so many people who are excellent runners who have like all these amazing records. They run like 10 kilometers in like under an hour, all these like fast pace, they have their own standards of what's considered a good runner. I don't look at those things. I did for a bit, and then I started running. I'm like, I cannot keep up with these guys.
Right.
So what I did was I just compete against myself. So what I recorded the day before, I would try to beat that today and set a new personal record. And the next day, I would try to beat my record that I set today. So I'm just kind of like constantly, competing against myself. And that just really gives me a high level of self-esteem as well. And it really raises my confidence instead of like comparing my record, my numbers, my time with other people who are, excellent runners. So I think that is one way to really keep yourself kind of happy. Listen to your inner voice, know what makes you happy, what makes you feel good. For me, it's like just compare myself to myself, not others.
I think that's a great tip. I think that's also, it would work in just life, not just for running, but also life itself. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think we have concepts like healthy competitions, and also the fact that sometimes it can be a motivational aspect to have a standard, a societal standard. But it's also true that it is a very backed situation, because at the same time, it only seeks for external validation, and that self-assurance also comes with the cost of depending your self-worth on someone else's work or someone else's situation. And I think that can be a little bit complicated. Of course, we cannot avoid comparisons or societal standards. We need to make the most out of those, but we also have to minimize the risks by being a little bit more self-aware about who we really are and what we really want.
Right, but I think for me sometimes it's like hard not to do that. For me at least, it's because sometimes I don't know what standards to set or what standards to look towards. So what do you do usually?
So I feel like things that are already set, the things that we see in social media, they can become a guide in some way of like, okay, this is the type of person that I want to be. It can become something motivational. But at the same time, when you have to like reach from within, I know that it's a pretty big problem of like figuring out what you really want to do and who you really want to become. But I feel like that whole journey is also interesting to explore for yourself. Either way, I just think that you have to avoid the negative risks. So whatever it is,
focus on the positive
focus on the positive aspects.
That's a good tip.
So even when we're talking about whether you want to be a 7 or a 10 or a 5, you just need to see what those societal requirements are. And when you look at the list, if you feel like that is just stupid, maybe that is not the
really
way.
Important to you.
Exactly. Maybe that importance is just not part of your life.
That's a good tip. So perhaps the healthiest goal isn't to live up to someone else's standards, but to define success on our own terms. After all, everyone's strengths, values, and journey are different. And maybe that's a much better measure than any number could ever be. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. And News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Ki-hoon.
Thanks for having me.
And also Fabio.
I'll give this episode a 7.
Great. And to our our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully your week is a perfect 10, even if you're a 7. We are
News Generation.
Time to set the facts straight. Get Korea right.
한국을 대표하는 먹거리 하면 뭐가 먼저 떠오르시나요?
김치입니다.
안녕하세요. 저는 베트남에서 온 옥안입니다. 김치는 한국인의 밥상에 빠지지 않고 올라오는 먹거리인데요. 그런데 가끔 김치에 대해 잘못 알고 있는 분들이 있더라고요. 그래서 제가 오늘 김치에 대한 바른 정보를 알려드리려고 해요. 김치는 한국의 전통 발효 식품인데요. 한국에서 가장 많이 접하는 김치는 배추김치예요. 고춧가루, 마늘, 젓갈 등 다양한 양념을 넣어 버무려 발효시키면 맛있는 김치가 탄생합니다.
와, 맛있겠다. 선생님, 김치 종류가 엄청나게 많다고 들었어요.
네.
어떤 게 있어요?
김치는 배추김치를 한국 사람들은 제일 많이 먹긴 해요. 뭐 깍두기, 총각김치, 무로 만든 김치가 있고